Hey, welcome to the Razzle Dazzle Show, a podcast where we talk about our favorite video games and all things pop culture with an emphasis on our favorites. I'm your host, Jared, and our guest today is J. Michael Donohue. From a young age, Jay knew that he wanted to be a writer, to create interesting characters to torture. Jay's work has been featured on hyper epics and several anthologies and includes such titles as Together Forever, Tagalong, Rebecca, Tales of Resonant, and Crushed. He also has his own comic called Morsels. Morsels is a collection of 8 delectably bite-sized horror stories that will send a shiver down your spine and leave you screaming for more. Morsels is a love letter to such titles as Tales from the Crypt, Creepshow, and Tales from the Hood that recreates the experience of old horror comics. Jay was recommended to be on the show by previous guest Will Robson. Let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at Razzle Dazzle Show, on TikTok at Razzle_Dazzle_Show, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Raz_Daz_pod. And with all that being said,
it's Razzle Dazzle time!
Hello, Jay. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. A quick Kickstarter question. What's the first thing you would do in a zombie apocalypse?
It doesn't seem very much like a Kickstarter question, but God, a zombie apocalypse. Are we talking fast zombies or slow zombies?
Oh, that's
what
a good
world
one.
Are we in?
Slow zombies. Let's go more traditional.
Slow zombies? Oh, God. If I had a little bit of a leeway or something, maybe try lock down my house, maybe get someplace to try and, I guess, loot as much food as I can before everybody else does.
So the first thing is food.
Yeah. Try and get, lock down the place or divide and conquer. So have my wife, hey, whoever's with me, start locking this place down. I'm going to go get food. Be ready to let me in.
So like Scooby-Doo rules, like split up, gang. Let's all do this.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, there's a McDonald's just down the street, so maybe nice. I'll just go fortify myself in there. I mean, we know that food's going to last for years.
I saw this video like not too long ago of I don't know, these scientists testing out like how long it takes for certain fast food meals to like grow mold, because when food grows mold and gets moldy, that means it's actual nutritional, I guess, to some value, like it's food, right? So for like, I don't know, duration of maybe 2 weeks or whatever, they had a Big Mac, a Whopper, and a Chick-fil-A Deluxe or whatever. The Big Mac and the Whopper grew mold, but the Chick-fil-A was the same condition as they first got it.
Really?
Yeah, so I don't know if that means it's preserved well or it's like not real food, but maybe Chick-fil-A is the answer to world hunger in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, I think I wonder if it's because it's breaded versus like cooked, but versus just grilled or something. But now, see, I think what this is I think not to be too rabbit hole and conspiracy theory, but I bet these videos are all concocted by the different fast food places, and they just leave themselves out. So like Wendy's probably made that one.
Right.
Because it's putting down all, hey, look how fast these promo. Because I've seen videos talking about a double cheeseburger from McDonald's, and they're talking like it sat out for like 2 months. And they're like, well, yeah, it's hard, it's stale, but like no mold, no nothing on it. So see, it's just, they're just slandering each other.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, and how would you describe the musical background of your childhood?
Oh, man. So I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, just kind of outside the downtown area. Musical background, man, I'd have to say I wasn't very cool when I was a kid. It was a lot of pop, popular music. My mom definitely, I listened to a lot of Beatles. Mm-hmm. She's a big Beatles fan. Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, she loved all these 80s hair metal bands. So it was always her rule that, hey, if you're in my car, I listen to the radio. So yeah. I've kind of come to grow to love those, love those bands. And then just kind of as I got older, alternative rock, punk, all kinds of different things.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have any video games in the household growing up? Any instruments?
Instruments? No, I think I tried trumpet for maybe about a month and And band wasn't for me. I tried guitar. I was a kid that was very hard to keep focused and really want to put in the work.
Right.
I just wanted to be able to pick up a guitar and just start playing.
Doesn't everybody?
Yeah, exactly. Now, video games, yeah, I think since, because I have an older brother, he's about 5 years older. So it's always been like, I kind of get the hand-me-downs as he gets the new system. Right. So like we had regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo, 64. He kind of jumped ship before I did and went like, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, all the PlayStation consoles and stuff like that. So always played tons of games.
Did you have a favorite show growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as I can remember, like I've always loved scary stuff. Goosebump, like I read all the Goosebump books up to a certain point when I was a kid and watched the show. Are You Afraid of the Dark was a big one that I loved. Anything that was kind of spooky as a kid. Ninja Turtles, all different things kind of throughout as different ages and things like that.
Okay. We'll get more into the spooky stuff in a moment, but what was the first band or musician that really got your attention when you were young?
I would say probably the first one I remember really getting into and following was a buddy of mine was with a friend of mine was probably Blink-182.
Okay. Yeah,
I think that was one of the like I said, I'm my wife gets, well, my wife doesn't get annoyed with me, my brother-in-law does. I'm weird. I am not good at remembering like names of songs, who like the bands. I mean, unless they're like really big or somebody I really listen to, but generally I don't know who sings what. Like I've always just heard a song and I liked it. Yeah. So like my brother-in-law is very musically inclined. I mean, he's got great taste in music, but he's very much like, if you looked at his iPod compared to mine, it used to annoy me because his would be like full albums of Pearl Jam, every album. Like if it was Foo Fighters, it's every song from every album. Like he's just got everything. Mine's like one song from this album, two from this album. Like I listen to him like, I don't like that song. I don't want to put it on here. Like.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So my playlist, my iPod, my playlist was very sporadic.
Okay. Do you remember?
But Blink-182 is probably the first one. Sorry, that my friend got me into. I think I had all the records and listened to them and things like that.
Okay, yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Do you remember the first physical piece of music that you've owned that was yours? Do you remember your first one?
Yeah, it's probably a Blink-182. Yeah. Actually, my favorite, this will be funny, I think earlier than that, one of the first CDs I remember owning was the Twister soundtrack. Actually, that was one of the first CDs that I remember owning. One of my uncles was actually a huge person in Bloomington, Indiana, where Indiana University, IU is. And he lived there for years. He owned his own record shop. I mean, he was way into music. And so he used to bring me around Christmas time if there was something that I wanted or there was an album that I wanted. My grandma would ask him to get it or he'd bring it. Some of them would be like the do not resell, like the ones that probably just sent to him, whatever. But yeah, I remember seeing Twister and just I still love that movie, but loving that movie. And so for Christmas, he got me that soundtrack. And that soundtrack is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Out of all movie soundtracks.
I know. Yeah. And then I would say probably, then if you go, what I bought when I was probably getting the music would probably be, I think it was Enema of the State by Blink-182. I think that was probably one of the first ones that I bought.
Okay, cool. My next question involves some explanation. I'm also part of this podcast called 3 Song Stories, where we tell people's biography through music. So each guest comes on and they pick 3 songs that whenever they listen to it, it brings them back to a moment in time that they remember vividly, or they have like a story associated with it. So my next question is, do you have a song story out of the top of your head?
Oh God, this is a terrible question to ask me. Like I said, I'm not great. I mean, if you go my story overall, I mean, I would definitely say, let's say 8 days a week would be a big one. Because like I said, that was a lot when I was younger, riding in the car, my mom, listening to Beatles and things like that. That was probably one of my favorite songs of theirs at the time that, I'd want to listen to.
8 days a week, I love you.
So let's jump into your career as a comic book writer. How did you first get into comic books?
Oh, I mean, I've always been kind of a comic book, geek. I used to read Spider-Man, Batman, I mean, all kind of the superhero stuff. And then as I got older, got into a lot of probably the more indie stuff. Like I remember my buddy turning me on to 30 Days of Night by Steve Niles. Love that book. I remember going to my local comic book shop here in Indiana. I lived in Texas for a year, so I remember going to Austin Books and Comics, and like there I discovered like Hack and Slash by Tim Seeley. Also his Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter, another great one. This kind of predates The Walking Dead, so before Kirkman became, the next zombie master. But Battle Pope, he had this, I think it was like 3 or 4 issues, and it was ridiculous. It was like Pope John Paul. I can't remember which one they were on because there's multiple ones, but he basically is like, he's killed, but he comes back as like this superhero, and his sidekick is Jesus, who he's got like, he's kind of like a hippie dressed. He's got a shirt on that says like, what would I do on it? But just that, just kind of that out there stuff. Now, as for writing, like I've always like loved to write, short stories, write different things. I've done that through, grade school, high school. It's funny, if I had to write a paper about something, I mean, it was like pulling teeth. But if it was a creative writing story, then, oh yeah, I'm all about this. Let's do this. I've taken multiple creative writing classes when I was in high school, and then in college was my minor. But as for comics, like I've written some student like short films when I was at college. I've done short stories. I've always had these big grand ideas on how to do comic books, but for like years just never really knew how to get it off the ground. Had the idea, maybe wrote the scripts, so on and so forth. So it was probably a few years ago, and I'm probably going into more than what you asked, but I realized I needed some ideas, some stories to kind of show off, kind of as a resume,
like a portfolio, and
some good good advice that I had from a buddy that I know is like to start small. Right. So I literally wrote, kind of talked with different creators on how to do stuff, but then I wrote a 3-page story because making comics is expensive. So that's actually when I wrote the first version of Together Forever. That's the book that I just kickstarted. But I wrote the script, put it on Twitter. Hey, are there any artists that would want to, work with me on this, so on and so forth? And then J. Paul Sheik wrote me, hey, yeah, sure. I'd be great to, draw for you. Checked out his work, really liked it. We just kind of started chatting, and we really hit it off. We're both kind of the weird, goofballs. Same love for like horror, EC Comics, Tales from the Crypt, things like that. So it really worked out. And so we did that Together Forever. And then I was like, great. All right, I got one story done. What do I do next? And then what's funny is Jay comes to me and he's like, hey, I've done some work for this site called hyperepics.com. And their whole thing is that it's all 3-page comics. Everything on there is that way. And so he's like, I'd love to, he goes, can I show him our story that we did? I was like, sure, go for it. I mean, like, they're not going to want it, but go for it. And I don't say that anything on Jay. He did amazing on the art, but that was just kind of my self-deprecation. Like, why are they going to want something that I wrote? Right. It's the first comic I've done. But then I think the next day he was like, run me back. Oh, hey, they want to publish it. I was like, oh my God. I was like, cool. I was ecstatic. Be like, I felt like I just won the Eisner or something. But and so it was really cool because they kind of commissioned us to do a couple more stories. So we did stories together. I did other stories with different artists, and then that kind of just snowballed after a while into doing Morsels. So it was kind of just this compilation of all the stories that I did. Yeah, that's great. So how did you get into learning that you like horror, weird stuff? God, I've loved horror, I think, since I was a kid. Yeah. What sparked it? And, I was born in 84, so obviously I was born in the 80s. I can't quite say if I was a full 80s kid. Yeah. Just because really by the time that I started realizing stuff, I'm, going into the 90s. Of course. But, I remember watching Nightmare on Elm Street, the Friday the 13th. I think I had seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, I had seen all the big ones. Stephen King, Pet Sematary, Pet Sematary 2, It, the miniseries. I remember that being a big deal on TV. And so I always wanted to watch scary stuff. But what was funny is I was always terrified by it. I would beg and beg and beg to watch Nightmare on Elm Street. But then like when it was bedtime and like I'm in my, standing in my doorway and my bed's all the way across the room and I got to turn off the light, it would be like flip it off and run and just leap onto my bed and like hide under my cover. But I always went back for more. Howling, American Werewolf, and I will say, embarrassing. My first one, I wouldn't, and this is probably the few cases I wouldn't say it's my favorite or the best by any means, but like I remember seeing an American Werewolf in Paris and thinking, oh man, this is so good. Then I saw American Werewolf in London. I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But yeah, so, and like I said, I mean, even as a kid, Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, everything spooky I just wanted to watch.
Fear Street?
I remember reading some of the Fear Street.
Okay.
But I don't know. I remember those. Those were probably coming out. I think I was probably the age where I was just maybe too young, or some of them I saw, I was like, I don't know if this really fits. Like, I really like Goosebumps. So I don't think I ever really got much into Fear Street. But yeah, I ate up Goosebumps. I remember them being in the grocery stores, like, on the aisles right before you're checking out. I'd always beg my mom, oh, the new one's out. Can I get this one?
And clearly you like Ghostbusters, Paranorman, I see behind you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm big Ghostbusters fans, Paranorman.
Yeah.
This, you can see, this is actually the original art for my variant cover for Morsels.
It's so cool. So cool to see that. Of course, I'm not surprised that, you'll have your work framed up, because you should. It's, it's your baby. It's your hairy, ugly baby.
Yes. But yeah, if you could see the rest of my office, I mean, I've got Universal Monsters everywhere.
Yeah.
A bunch of Creep Show stuff.
Yeah, cool. No, yeah, I love it. So how did you come up with the name Morsels?
Oh man, I think at the time, I don't know 100%, but a lot of it was just kind of, okay, I've got all these short stories. Because one, there were multiple artists that I want to work with that were amazing artists, but they are expensive. As they should be. I don't say that as a complaint, but as somebody that's trying to do this, it's like, hey, I can't really afford to come and write a 25-page, script and have it all done from the beginning. So I played around with doing 3 pages, 4 pages, so on and so forth. And so I think when I decided that, hey, I have 4 or 5 stories, talked to a few people about doing a few more, I'm like, okay, what can I call this? And I can't remember. I'm sure I had other ideas, but then I just thought they're like, oh, there's just these little like little nuggets, little bite-sized stories, I guess is what I was trying to find. So. Yeah,
no. And that's just a great pun all around. Morsels, bite-sized stories, zombies. But I love it. Yeah, I, of course, read the comic that you sent me. And man, I was really surprised that it was like very short stories. At first, when I saw like the number of pages, there's like 58 or something, I was like, oh, okay, this is like a little lengthy boy. But no, it's I'm pretty sure the first story was Together Forever. And I'm like, oh shit. First of all, I've never thought about that kind of situation of, your significant other, your wife gets turned into a zombie, and you're like, I love her. I f***ed up once. Let me not do it again. Together Forever. That's fucking insane. Like, I've never thought about I can't think of a lot of like love horror stories. Frankenstein? Bride of Frankenstein, I don't know. Like, there's that recent movie from Zelda Williams. That's
Lisa Frankenstein. Warm Bodies by Isaac Marion.
Oh, okay.
Was a good one.
Oh, there's a couple.
But yeah, they're sprinkled within there. But yeah, not a lot. Together Forever was a story like forever, just kind of in the back of my mind. Finally got it out on paper. But I love the idea of playing with perspective, because any movie you watch, especially with zombies, it's like, okay, people are reanimating and coming to eat my brains or eat my flesh or kill me, this and that. So it's interesting. It's like, okay, well, what if somebody didn't see this as
a bad thing?
The apocalypse, it's a miracle. Like, oh my God, the people I lost are coming back. That was kind of fun to play with. And I thought the colors and everything that Jay did, it felt very Tales from the Cryptish. And that's probably, of Morsels, that is probably the most commented on story by people that have read it. And so that's kind of why more recently, kind of reimagined that into a longer tale and brought J. Paul back to do the art, which, he absolutely just killed it. And the story is very much like, it was really fun to play around with and to create a new story, but also honor the original story and even kind of bring in, like, kind of reimagine certain things that happened. And we just brought that to Kickstarter and hit our goal.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And all the art is all drawn and inked.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. And Jay's just been knocking it out of the park. And I mean, working like a dog, and not from not because I told him to. I think originally I was like, hey, we'll do a few, we'll get this going. And he's like, oh yeah. Oh, but I like this. What about this page? He's awesome. Yeah. And it's fun to have somebody as excited about doing the project as I am.
Yeah. I also found what was it? Crushed? The one with the big kaiju?
Yes.
Crushed? Yeah. That's interesting. It's clearly like the spoilers, I guess. I don't know. If you don't mind, like, this guy's partner, I'm assuming, is controlling a giant kaiju, and it's like mystical, and there's like a connection, and it's like kind of Pacific Rim-y. So that's the one thing I was not expecting from like a horror comic, for like, would you call it anthologies or like little, what is it?
Yeah, I'd say, it's an anthology book.
Yeah.
So I've kind of talked. Yeah, that story's funny. So Jeremy Simster, who is the artist on that, he's actually, he does a lot of concept art for Marvel and like the Marvel shows, and he's done other stuff. But he was a guy that I've kind of chatted with off and on, and I think I had done some stories, and he actually came to me and was like, hey, I really like what you're doing. He's like, why don't you write me something and I'll draw it? And I was like, oh man, this is awesome. Like, I've never had an artist come to me and say, hey, I want to do something. And so, yeah, I had this idea. I think it originally started, it was almost like Godzilla meets When Harry Met Sally. Like, that was the original like idea. Cause I'm like, I just like sometimes like the mashups of genres. But then it kind of, I don't know, mutated. Like, I was trying to go comedy, but then horror just kind of came into it.
Yeah.
Then it became kind of like a little bit like Carrie. Like, I kind of imagine like that's kind of like a little bit of inspiration in there too.
Right.
Because you just have this poor girl that something bad's happened to her. And, that's what I mean. You think the guys, like I said, I like to put perspective and what people are, their expectations. Because then you have this guy that like, oh my God, he's the hero. Okay, he's going to stop her. And then you're like, well, it's kind of a D-bag way of doing that.
It's one way of stopping her.
Yeah, but then in the end, it's like, well, if you're going to stop something, you better make sure you stop it.
Yeah.
So,
other than Together Forever, is there a particular story in Morsels that you find most intriguing?
Yeah, I think another one that I really liked was, oh man, and this is really bad that I cannot remember title off the top of my head, man. If at first you don't succeed, I think is what it is. But and that was one of the few werewolf ones I had in there, which I really enjoyed. Yeah. But again, I don't know. I just kind of had this idea of this melancholy kind of sad story, and it's like, this guy, like, it's a obviously being a werewolf is a curse. That one was a fun one to write, and then I mean the art, that was
the art is phenomenal for a dark, air quotes dark story. It's very vibrant. It's very bright.
Yes. So that one's one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. But really, all of them. I mean, I love all of them and it's mainly because I've gotten to work with so many different, like, really amazing artists, and I think what's really fun about Morsels is that the style of every story feels so different.
Yes. Yeah, it's like in that term, it's like Star Wars Visions, where it's like all these different animation studios coming together to make like individual vignettes, Star Wars stories, and they're all vastly different. And here it's with horror stuff, and like personally, I am not a big horror enjoyer, right? And that's kind of like what I love about this show, is that exposes not only me but also my co-hosts to like other brands or other genres of pop culture media that we normally wouldn't absorb in the first place. So with Will Robson, who was on the show, and of course you with your horror comics, zombie comics and Morsels, this is like pushing my boundaries into like what do I actually enjoy. And reading Outbreaks is phenomenal. I really like what Will is doing with that. And now reading Morsels, it's another take, another way to approach the horror genre that I haven't seen before in like Hollywood or in shows, you know what I mean? So I really think you are doing a phenomenal job with the comic.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You've worked on projects like Hyper Epics and other anthologies. How does collaboration enhance your creative process, and what have you learned from working with other creators?
I think a lot, probably like the page restrictions, especially like Hyper Epics, everything being 3 stories and things like that, and doing multiple stories for them really helped me focus on what is essential to the story and what is just kind of filler. What can I get? You know, what do I absolutely need and what do I not? So even when I've started doing longer scripts, you know, I still kind of have that mindset of, okay, is this really pushing the story forward? You know, does this make sense, or is this something that, you know, maybe I thought was cool, but really, you know, doesn't help? So that's been big. I think really learning how to write scripts and what I should put in, what I shouldn't too, is really big with working with different artists. Because obviously, you know, the scripts are going to be similar. You're going to get your panel, you're going to get your descriptions and things like that. But, you know, some artists, and I always try and sit down with somebody, especially new, and kind of say, what's your process? What do you like? What do you want? Because I want that collaboration. You know, many times Jay has like sent me back a page and it may be different than what I wrote, but it works so much better that way. And same with, you know, a lot of the people that I worked with. And so that's kind of helped me. I feel like I've always been, I'm always kind of the person that's always craved feedback. I hate to, like, certain people that are close to me, not that they can read my stuff, but like, you know, they're not going to want to hurt my feelings.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not what I want. I don't want somebody to say, oh my God, this is crap. What the heck? You know, but, you know, hey, this isn't working. This isn't working. This is working. I mean, I've always craved that. I mean, you only get better if you get feedback. There are people that there's a guy, and this is probably a little bit of the bitterness in me, but it's funny. There was like it's so stupid saying it now, but when we were in school, I was part of one of 2 like rival filmmaking gangs, is what they would say. Cause like, they'd always back or like, oh, well, they suck, this suck. Well, we're doing this better, blah, blah, blah. You know, It was kind of healthy competition, but there was one of the guys that was in the other one. And if you criticized anything, he got mad, like, oh, well, whatever. What I'm doing is just fantastic. And it's like all this time later, it's like, well, he's still kind of right where he was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Like,
he couldn't take
and what stinks is like, I think if he took that feedback, he has talent, he has, you know, that possibility. I just don't think he wanted to be told, hey, what I'm doing isn't good.
Yeah, of course.
Or how to make it better. Oh yeah, I think I went on a bit of a tangent there.
No, that's okay. That's what we love.
Yeah.
What's your creative process like now? What do you look towards for inspiration?
Oh, I mean, books, movies, comics. I definitely find like it sounds cliche when people say, oh, you got to read to get better. You know, and to spend time reading stuff, but like you do, like it definitely goes back and forth. You know, like I like Stephen King, Rachel Harrison has wrote some awesome books. Clay McLeod Chapman, he's gonna be so mad at me if he hears this. He's one of my favorite authors, and I feel he's very much, his stories are very inspiring to me, and he's very much a Stephen King-ish. He would probably tell me, no, I don't know what you're talking about. But what I absolutely love about him is it's very like down to earth and feels realistic of where he puts his horror. So very much like Richard Matheson, you know, Stephen King, all that stuff. And that's the kind that I've always really loved, where it feels like, okay, I'm not in some make-believe land where I'm never going to go. You know, This feels like, oh my God, I could walk down into my living room and there's a monster there.
Right.
And my brain would melt if I saw it. But like comics, like I also love to read comics. And I think that even is a huge help as a comic writer, because I even like to start thinking, like, I read through, have fun with it, but then also just kind of looking how things are, composed, kind of start like almost writing the panels I'm seeing in my head.
Right.
Just so I can kind of like, okay, this is how this page would play out.
Yeah.
I might write it. So I think those are all very inspiring. I mean, obviously movies too. Sometimes it's kind of fun to see like, oh, that movie had such a great idea. I think I could execute something a little better. Maybe that's cocky because honestly, it would probably be just the same or no better if I did it. But it's still just kind of fun to, and not that I shouldn't be in a cocky moment, but it's fun to watch even movies that don't work and to really start thinking about, okay, what didn't work, what could have worked, things like that.
Right. The creative process doesn't stop.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Understood. Last question until the speed round. Many of your stories in Morsels evoke a sense of nostalgia and classic horror, which is what you strive for. How do you balance paying homage to these classics while creating something new and unique?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, really, like a lot of people say, I think I write the stories that I love to watch, I love to read, and something that I think I would have fun I'm doing. I also, not to be too M. Night Shyamalan, I always like a good, like, dark twist.
Yeah.
I don't want it to always be like, Together Forever was one that when I was rewriting this new one, it's like I talked to Jay a lot, and I wanted to have little things in the panels that were clues to be like, okay, something's not right. Like, why would they have that? But then it also seems like, oh, they're just in somebody's, oh, she's just walking through somebody's backyard. She's just doing this. So I love doing that. I love playing with people's expectations.
Right.
And really, like I said, I think I just play. I've gotten to the point where I try not to worry too much of, am I writing something that's too much like this? Am I doing something that's ripping this off? Now, obviously, I'm not going to try and, like, I'm looking at a poster. I know you can't see it, but like I had one for John Carpenter's The Thing.
Right.
It's like, obviously, I'm not going to sit there and write that word for word and say, hey, this is brand new. But I like to find funny ways to kind of even play homage to certain elements of movies that I like. Like, I even have this idea for, like, a sci-fi horror comedy. And so in it, like, you have the thing, you have the wolf, like, that's the big thing. That's the whole catalyst that starts the story off, and, coming to the camp and so forth. And so, like, I think I even like, oh, let's have something. What if it was like a little Pomeranian? So it's like something that's just off wall. That's like, okay, this is a little bit of a homage, but it's also its own thing.
Right.
So things like that, I always like to play with, and another thing that I'm excited for, and this will go out with Together Forever, is that it started off as a little gag that Jay did, and then it kind of snowballed. But we've got like, God, probably a good six to 10, somewhere in there, Stephen King Easter eggs.
Oh.
And just a bunch of little things that you'll just find, like references to his stories or him and stuff like that. So everybody that got physical copies from the Kickstarter, I'll send out. I'm having a buddy of mine kind of do a art postcard with it, but it's going to be the Stephen King like Easter egg hunt. And then I figured everybody can like write down what they find. And then if they find, like, send it back to me, and then like do a drawing for a couple like signed copies of the book. Like, I figured I would take cool. Like, but I want to try and get with those, just so it's a little bit special, is try and probably send a few to Roman Stevens, who's our colorist, but he's living in Germany right now. So I can get a few, like him signed, myself, Jeremiah, Trevor Henderson, who did the cover art. So try and get like the whole creative team and have a few of those to give away. But the Stephen King Easter egg hunt was a fun thing to cook up, because I was trying to find things that were like, some things are just kind of hidden. I didn't want it to be like, wait, who's that guy standing in the hallway? Oh, it's Stephen King.
Right.
But like one of them Jay came up with, I think, and this will give away if anybody reads, a freebie. But I think there's a shot of a trash can of somebody putting it in there, and the can that's falling in is like basically like Children of the Corn, like children's corn or something like that. I can't have to look at it. So there's a bunch of little just fun like Easter eggs that we just threw in there.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. I am looking forward to finding those. Awesome. So now let's get into the speed round, where I'm going to ask you a bunch of silly little questions, and we're going to have fun with it, see how you do. If you were the final boss in a video game, what would your title be?
God, let's go The Destroyer.
The Destroyer. Nice, simple, easy, gets the message across. What would your boss theme music be? And you can choose a song from anywhere.
All right, I have two answers. So funny one would be Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. Just because you'd be like, what is like, that would be hilarious. And then if you want to go serious and something like more hardcore, if you're thinking like boss, like Let the Bodies Hit the Floor.
Oh, sure, yeah.
God, what's the band's name? I can't remember. Drowning Pool.
Okay.
That would be more like, okay, oh yeah, let's fight.
Lock in, yeah.
It would be, but just to hear everybody's reaction if you start playing and then it's wham, you're like, what the hell?
If you were a superhero, what would your name be?
Oh man, God, I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen that. I think let's go Spider Guy.
The Spider Guy.
Just because Spider-Man's my favorite. Those are the powers that I would take. Would be Spider-Man's.
And that's would be the powers. Okay, that was the follow-up question. If you can live in the world of your favorite childhood show, movie, or game, which one would it be and why?
Oh, I think if it was a movie childhood, my favorite, I'd probably have to say The Monster Squad.
I know that movie. Oh my god, it's like the Goonies but with monsters.
Oh that was one of the most. I mean, that's one of my all-time favorite movies, and I remember feeling, because obviously I'm old before the internet and everything, but I remember I could never, like for years, never found anybody else that had seen that movie. Ever. I mention it and they look at me like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I remember it popping up on HBO every once in a while. At one point, my mom's friend found a VH copy in a mom and pop video store, and she knew I liked it. And so, we'll take this out later, but, unfortunately, I made a bootleg copy.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't find it anywhere. So I had that on VHS. Came out on DVD. I mean, I was such a nerd for this that I was thinking, I'm in college and I'm thinking, I got to go at midnight to Walmart to get this movie on DVD because I got to make sure I get a copy of that. I mean, I was the only one in the store. No one knew about that movie or cared. But I don't care. I was so happy that I got a copy on DVD.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Also, sidebar, this isn't what I have down for the speed round, but have you ever tried any of the Resident Evil games?
Yeah, I played Resident Evil 1. Resident Evil 2 was a big one that I played I had that back on, I think, was a PlayStation or PlayStation 2. Mm-hmm. I don't think I played much past that.
Okay. Since you played the second one, I highly recommend checking out the remake of the second one. It's really good. It's what you would have seen growing up. Like, it came out in the 90s or whatever. You have this vision, and now with the remake, it is like brought to undead life.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I've heard all the remakes. I've heard nothing but great things on the Resident Evil remakes.
Yeah. All right, moving on. What character from your childhood favorite show or movie would you most like to have as a friend in real life?
God, I'd probably have to go Monster Squad.
Yeah.
I mean, just being in that group, I think would be a ton of fun. You get to hang out with Frankenstein's monster. Yeah, I'd have to go that.
Okay. If your current favorite show or movie were to be adapted into a musical, what genre of music would you envision for it?
Oh, God. I mean, I just started Reservation Dogs. I don't know why I could see that working as a musical, like a comedy musical. That show's phenomenal. I just envision this weird version of The Bear as a musical. Those are probably the two main ones. Another one, let's see. I think, the first thing that popped to my head when I was looking at it in your Funniest Thing show was Evil Dead, but they've already done that. I'm pretty sure there is an Evil Dead, the musical.
Yep.
Breaking Bad, the musical, could be pretty awesome.
A whole number that says, that's Say My Name. That's the whole musical number.
Oh yeah, the danger doesn't knock. I am the danger. I could just see the lights going down and him singing that to himself.
That's a great answer. I love it. If you could attend any fictional event, for example, the Ewok celebration in Episode 6, Star Wars, which one would it be and why?
Now you say this, I have to think of an event that's happened in the movie. I mean, if you go with Star Wars would be a fun one. just the celebration at the end of New Hope.
Yeah.
We'll go. I want to pop in at the end of John Carpenter's The Thing, because I want to know, was one of those last two guys the Thing or not? I want to know. Okay, which one of you is an alien? Let's check this out.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's been up in the air for way too long. Tell me.
I love that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
If you could have a cameo appearance in any movie or show, which one would it be and what role would you play?
God, that's a tough one. There's so many movies. I just imagine Jaws, but this Arnold Schwarzenegger type. Like, they're all sitting there with that, but I just come in with like Uzis on like a helicopter. Or they're trying to blow up the shark, and when the shark blows up, really what you find out is it was me above with like a bomb dropping it on the shark.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love the creativity. Bonus points. If you had to guess, what would you say is the song you've listened to the most times in your life?
Maybe Learn to Fly by the Foo Fighters. That's one of my favorite. We could say All the Small Things by Blink-182. And then I would probably say No Rain by Blind Melon. Those are probably three songs that I find myself listening to. All
right. What activities or pursuits most make you lose track of time?
Playing video games.
Yeah.
I would say playing video games, like watching TV, especially like if it's something I've seen a lot. Like, I'm very much like when I'm writing or working or doing anything from like home, like I like to have something on. So you'll put a show on in the background. And then sometimes you're like, oh, I like this part. You just start watching and then you realize, oh crap, I'm way past my lunchtime. I got to get back to work.
What would your 14-year-old self think of who you are today?
Oh, God. I'd hope he'd think I was pretty cool. I wrote 2 comic books and had it. I would definitely go back and be like, hey, here's a few, Super Bowls. Here's who wins in a few Super Bowls. Throw that back to him. I don't know. I think I'd be pretty happy with where I'm at.
All right. It is now time for you to recommend 3 people that you're going to share this episode with and that you think they'll come on as guests on the show and that you think they'll say yes.
All right. I'm taking a guess. We'll see. So my first one I would say is J. Paul Sheik, who's the artist of Together Forever, both versions. Mm-hmm. And we've done some other stories. I'd say he'd be a really good one to have on. I think he would definitely be down for it. Alex Cormack is great in interviews. He's an awesome guy. He's done a lot with Rich Duick and John Lees. I love his art. He's actually the artist that did the main cover for Morsels.
Oh, cool.
The Ghoul. Yeah. And then third one, Colleen Palmer. She's really awesome. We are actually cooking up a book, I think, that we're going to bring to Kickstarter probably maybe around September,
cool.
October. Yeah. And she's really awesome. She's done a few books herself and with other people. I mean, we've been talking about like the story we have and the monster, and it's a lot of fun. And definitely kind of taking a step out of the world of Morsels and just kind of we're doing something completely new.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, let's work together to get them on the show. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Any final thoughts?
I think with everything, is probably lame as it sounds, I would say just be kind to one another. I mean, Jesus, I feel like today, even like forgiveness, I wish is something that we would practice. It's very much like somebody does something, it's jump on them, like, and I'm not saying some people, there aren't things that they deserve it. I'm just saying, I feel like one mistake and somebody's shunned.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I would just be kind, because even if we're all just kind to one another and treat another one with respect, then you just don't get yourself in the situation where you have to be canceled or other things. Let's just be cool.
Yeah. Well said. Well, thank you so much, Jay, for being on the show. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to more of your stories in the future.
Yeah, definitely. It was a pleasure.
All right, that's all the time we have for today, guys. If you want to hear more from Jay, be sure to check out his website and follow him on X at @JMichaelDonohue. And be sure to check out his Kickstarter for his latest comic, Graveyard Shift. Links to everything will be in the description down below. Please let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at RazzleDazzleShow, on TikTok at Razzle_Dazzle_Show, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Raz_Daz_pod. Be sure to leave us 5-star ratings and a nice little written review down below, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Next time on The Razzle Dazzle Show. At the end of the game, Ezio enters the library and then reads a lot. Just kidding. There are no books. There are no books in the library. Instead, he finds Altair's corpse sitting down, holding a manuscript page. It was very reminiscent. Have you seen Treasure Planet?
Yes.
You remember that scene that I'm talking about where they actually get to the treasure vault and then there's the skeleton of Captain Flint? That's what that reminded me of. Love Treasure Planet, by the way, one of my favorite movies. But you know, he finds his corpse sitting there, and then he gets to see the end of Altair's life, and then he locks himself in the library and sits down and dies.
Yeah.
So at this point, Ezio knows he's in a video game. He knows he's not the real protagonist, so he decides to leave the apple exactly where it is. And just kind of to hammer this point home that he is 100% aware that he is in a video game and he is not the main protagonist of said video game, despite being a playable character, he talks directly to Desmond. He talks to Desmond even though he doesn't know who he is, because he's come to terms with the fact that the story is not about him. And this is, like, jokes aside, he does come to the conclusion that he's just like a cog in a machine. He does know this. Tune in next week.